think dyslexia is a learning disorder that has to do with difficulty reading, recognizing letters and sounds, and also comprehension.
Dyslexia is a learning disorder. I would consider it more like a challenge. Sometimes that it can manifest itself in different ways, whether it's in reading with letters or in math. It doesn't have to be one or the other or both at the same time.
For me, in layman's terms, it has to do with flipping or letters floating.
When students have difficulty with reading and numbers, it's just like they just seem to flip their numbers and letters around, and it's kind of all processing. They have a hard time processing what is on a page.
Dyslexia is a medical diagnosis that can be diagnosed by a neuropsychologist, and it involves, in educational, we would consider that to be a specific learning disability in the areas of either basic reading, reading comprehension, math problem solving, math calculation, or written expression.
They struggle with reading, they struggle with accuracy, understanding, depending on the subject that they're learning.
Probably a lot, because even math has reading. So if letters are floating or moving or flipping around in their mind or on the page, I mean, they're going to struggle in almost every subject. Even the clues or the items that we have around a classroom may not be helpful to them, may not help them at all. So I can imagine it'd be exhausting and overwhelming.
Students with dyslexia may start developing low self-esteem because they have that hard time reading. This can make them start believing that they're just not good enough, that something's wrong with them. With low self-esteem also comes with withdrawal. They don't want to go around and play with friends because if there's something wrong with them, why would anyone want to play with them? So a lot of behavioral issues will come from that too. They might start acting out, or they are withdrawn. Anything to either get attention or push away attention. Just having that low self-esteem, like if they're not good at reading, then they're just not going to be good at anything.
Everything is such a challenge. They learn differently, they think differently, and so everything is going to be that much harder. They're probably really frustrated all of the time. It's just hard for them to comprehend, it's hard for them to read, and so therefore it's hard to, that goes across the board in every subject.
I think they see things a little bit differently. Typically, a dyslexic student has average to above average intelligence and has an awful lot to bring to the educational setting. The challenges come into play because the way in which they learn is slightly different than a neurotypical peer. It doesn't necessarily always mean it's a disability, it's just a different way of learning. So once a student understands that they have dyslexia, utilizing the tools to help them learn best can enhance their learning. If they don't understand dyslexia or haven't been identified and are trying to navigate through the curriculum and the activities that are being asked, if they don't understand what tools will help them, it makes it a challenge because their brain is just slightly wired a little bit differently. It doesn't make it less of a brain, it just means it works slightly different, and actually out of those differences can come a lot of beautiful work and can produce amazing things at school. It's just being able to tap into the right tools to unlock that.
If I had a student in my class, which I did have one at the beginning of the year, he actually transferred into an upper grade, which is his age grade. We thought that would be best for him socially. For me as a teacher, I just try to provide more help and assistance. So whenever we're reading as a class, if they're reading as a group, all my students know that, yes, some students will struggle with reading, and that is okay. We just help them out and we move forward so that we can just continue to learn and to grow. I tell this to all my students on a daily basis anyways, because it's something that they all can hear. But I just make sure that I give them the help that they need in any way possible.
Sometimes students need color overlays to kind of help them see the words on print a little bit better. Sometimes enlarging the print can also help.
That you would have to carve out one-on-one time for them, just to figure out like where their struggles are. I don't think, from my understanding, dyslexia shows itself different in every child, so I wouldn't want to put them in a box. So at the beginning of the year, I would want to sit with them and try to figure out where their struggles are and see how I can accommodate that throughout my lessons and how much extra time I would need to take for them.
My special accommodations are more geared towards helping them realize their struggles, to recognize that they do have to learn a different way and try to find what way works best for them. And I do help them. I've bought in some books that are written in the dyslexia font to help those kids feel successful with their reading.
If we're doing math, making sure that the processes are defined in step-by-step order instead of saying, here, go do it, good luck, kind of breaking things down into smaller chunks.
I have heard about a font that was written specifically for kiddos with this, and so I've searched some of that out, and every kiddo is different, so just working individually with them to see what their need is, because maybe theirs isn't a flipping but a floating, and so I always try to start there, try to identify specifically what that child would need, and then look for resources.
There are some people that say sometimes having a mirror close by can sometimes help for those students that have severe dyslexia with mirrored reading, that sometimes actually holding a mirror up like this is easier to read things through the mirror than to not, so that would be an accommodation. Activities that are being asked, if they don't understand what tools will help them, it makes it a challenge because their brain is just slightly wired a little bit differently. It doesn't make it less of a brain, it just means it works slightly different, and actually out of those differences can come a lot of beautiful work and can produce amazing things at school. It's just being able to tap into the right tools to unlock that.
The main one that teachers bring to me is if they are transposing, if they're flipping letters and numbers. Another one, sometimes they're all over the page, the child is, so that, or if all of the reading strategies that have been tried aren't working, that's a red flag for lots of things, but we always consider the dyslexia at that time. So
it's a lot more intense than just reversals. It can be, I think, tracking when you're reading left to right and losing yourself on the page or where to go. I think that's one of two things I think that could be a symptom of dyslexia, but it can also just be being taught how to read across the page, and what do you do when you come to the end? Oh, you drop down and return. And I think a lot of times teachers think that that's an inherent skill that students have, but that's also a skill that needs to be explicitly taught. And also making sure that there's a language component, because dyslexia has some stronger research that shows that there is typically a language-rooted problem with dyslexia, and that the students who have dyslexia sometimes have a language concern. So making sure that the vocabulary and understanding the nuances of the English language are understood. So also just checking for understanding to make sure that they understand what you're asking or what needs to be done.
There are many warning signs, such as the withdrawal, the either acting out or behaviors could be warning signs that something isn't right in the classroom. I also look for how they read or write. Writing is a huge indicator of dyslexia. If they're flipping their letters around while they're writing, or even the same thing with their numbers in math, I look for all of that.
Yeah, I think that you look for the obvious like letter reversals, number reversals, that kind of thing, but I also think that it manifests itself in struggling to comprehend, being unable to sound out unfamiliar words, not having your phonics down, comprehension issues in math and reading, obviously.
They're easily distracted, or they like to become the distraction. It kind of reflects off of them so they don't have to know everything. It's kind of like a class clown thing that I think.
If I was a classroom teacher and I thought that I had or knew for a fact that a child had dyslexia and they have a medical diagnosis, I would want to make sure I understood as a teacher if it was dyslexia, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia, and I would make sure whenever the child is being assessed, I wasn't holding that dyslexia. I wouldn't penalize them. So for an example, if I have a student who has dyslexia and I know that reading comprehension is an issue and I'm giving a social studies test, I would pull that student and or others, I would say, anyone want me to read the test? I'm reading it over here. And I would probably kind of, yeah, you over here, kind of make sure that they join that group. And I'd read the test aloud. That way that I'm measuring the social studies skill and not the reading ability. Starting next year, the state has mandated for the state of Missouri that all teachers in public school have to go through training to understand dyslexia and what that means. So there is a new movement to broaden the awareness of teachers and to teach them what a dyslexic student may look like in their classroom. I do think that most good teachers look at student strengths and weaknesses and try to build strengths and help weaknesses. So I think we are making that shift in education. I think we've got a little ways to go, but I think as teachers view their profession as a craft and want to help students the best they can, I think there is more of an awareness that everybody learns a little bit differently. And I do think that a lot of the curriculum and the presentations are being changed for each student, maybe one who has dyslexic versus somebody who might have ADHD. I do see that being more of a shift in our education, and I think it's becoming a bit more common and more acceptable to not have everybody march to the same page and do all the same projects and learn the same way. I think dyslexia is a topic that we are learning in education a lot more on. I think the state legislation is opening some more doors to dyslexia. I think currently we're calling that a specific learning disability, where people who have more knowledge about dyslexia prefer the word dyslexia versus specific learning disability. I think when you align the two definitions up, they're very similar in nature. I think it's just a matter of a shift in thinking and really making sure that whenever, if you have a specific learning disability or dyslexia, that whatever you call it, that's whatever you call it. But what's more important is that you're helping and assisting and providing that direct instruction to the student that they're needing to be successful in school.